Hello and welcome back to the Without Limits podcast. I am your host, Ollie Marchon. This is episode 3 and part 2, where myself and Sam sit down and discuss my origin story and how I built my fitness empire. If you haven't yet listened to episode 1, please go back and take a listen, because today we're going to take off where we finished up, as my rugby career come to an end and we started to build the Marchon business as it's known today. If you've been enjoying these episodes, I'd really appreciate it if you go and show the channel some love. Give it a follow, share it, and leave a comment below. And so without further ado, here is episode 3 of the Without Limits podcast and part 2 of my origin story.
Here we are, episode 2 of your series of events throughout your life. Last episode we went through your earlier stages growing up, where it got you in rugby. So we kind of left off towards the end of your rugby career. So I want to sort of pick up from there.
Yep.
In terms of how did that come to an end? Do you remember the last sort of moments of knowing that you were going to transition out of that and then where that led you? But let's take it back to those first few moments of realizing that something else was needed.
Yeah. I hate going back there, man, but let's go back there. I mean, anyone that sort of has followed me over the last 6-7 years, maybe even longer than that, will attest to the fact that I don't talk as much about rugby as maybe I probably should have or could have. So yeah, I guess like, why did I transition out of rugby? I think going back to from the previous episode, I spoke to the fact that I always wanted to be a professional sportsman. I wanted to be a professional rugby player, and I was so hell bent on that being my singular focus. So when I kind of achieved it, I achieved it in terms of like the title, like I was playing professional rugby, but I wasn't able to get the fulfillment from that title, whether it was like financially, whether it was like the lifestyle. I don't really know what it was. I didn't really know what to expect when I kind of got there, right? But I felt as though I was putting way more effort in to it. I had put way more effort in, if we think about the sort of 10 years that sort of preceded it, than what I was kind of getting in rewards. And that might have just come down to my ability, right, to not get to the top level. Anywho, at England Sevens, the management had changed. So the guy that brought me in, he went on to coach Fiji because the Olympics was coming up, and that was an amazing opportunity for him. And there was a new coach that came in. I won't sort of name any names. I don't think it's necessary. But when the new coach came in, there was a bit of a restructure within the RFU and what sevens meant to the overall kind of rugby program, and then them trying to bring sevens and 15s back in line, because before then, sevens had become very much like a specialist sport, and you wouldn't see many top sevens players excelling in the top 15 version of the game, and vice versa, to be honest, because sevens have become really specialist. So when that change happened, new management comes in. I had around 6 months left of my contract, and I just wasn't in that coach's long-term plans. So the issue for me, as someone who was so dedicated to training, was so dedicated to the recovery, the lifestyle, and just like wanting to give my all to whatever I was doing, regardless of what it was, whether it was rugby or not. But in this instance, it was rugby. Turning up to training and putting my body through hell, because it's tough, right? The on-pitch stuff, the conditioning, the nutrition, the like not going out on weekends, like trying to maintain high performance, like you're representing your country. But it was all kind of in vain because I knew that I wasn't going to be in the long-term plans of this coach. So for 6 months, and there wasn't access to like sports psychologists or anyone that you could really talk to about like what was kind of going on in the top 2 inches. So I think looking back at the time, I didn't know that was the place that I was in, but I was in this, felt very trapped in the fact that my days were numbered. I still felt as though I had some stuff to achieve within professional rugby, but I wasn't part of his plans. So it was almost like the last 12 to 18 months had all been in vain because I was just getting started, which was annoying. It took me back to the knee injury. It just took me back to all those times where you just like the door kept getting closed.
And in terms of, so the period before was obviously everything had led up to your dream of becoming a professional sports person. That's all you said you ever wanted to do. Yeah. You achieved that in a sense that you'd gotten to a stage where probably in your head that you'd made that a reality. Yeah. And then how big of a gap was it between then that becoming true and then this change happening? Was there a period of time where you felt comfortable in the fact that you'd done what you wanted to do? And how was that in terms of, did you sort of have imposter syndrome, or was it a sense of like, I am where I always needed to be?
Yeah, I think there probably was an element of imposter syndrome, right? Because like for me, to be a real professional at something, you need like the 10,000 hours. And I'd got the 10,000 hours of like playing rugby because I played since I was like 14 years old. But I didn't have the 10,000 hours as a professional. I didn't have like the 10-year career, right? I didn't play from my teenage years into my 30s and have that sort of career. And I guess that's probably what I wanted as a young boy, like a full career as a professional sports person. But I had tastes of it for periods of my life, right? Left school at 18, taste of professional rugby for a year or two, go to university, then I'm playing semi-professionally on the fringes, get back into the England 7 squad, and then for 18 months, 2 years, I'm getting a taste of it. And then that door's getting closed again. So it's a bit of reality for me, like then where does my rugby career go? You start looking for clubs, players have got agents trying to get them into clubs, and I was a realist. I also come from a background where it wasn't about the money, but at 27, 28 years old, you start to think, I don't want to get to 32 and have to like start my career again. For a lot of athletes, they have to do that even when they have to do it even when they've reached the highest highs of the game, even in football, right? For a lot of them that earn huge amounts of money, they have to go on to do something else. So I guess knowing that was like 4 or 5 years away, another injury could make that even sooner. And the reality was like staying in the professional game just for that name on my fucking business card wasn't actually that glamorous. Like it was probably going to be championship rugby if I really went for it, where you're earning close to sweet FA, you're traveling around the country, you're getting beaten up week in, week out, and it doesn't really go anywhere from there. So that 6 months was really tough for me looking back. I didn't really know it at the time, but I think that had a massive impact on me negatively, particularly more mentally than physically. Because then from England Sevens, I went back to my local sort of club, which it was a semi-professional club. They were playing in National 1, so it was like an okay standard of rugby. You picked up a few £100 every week. And it was more for the social, right? But I went back to that club probably with a bit of expectation on me because I'd left them to go and play full-time rugby for a few years. And I always had high expectations on myself. But I think the sort of negative headspace I was in, coupled with the fact that I was always already looking at like what was next. And what was next for me was the fact that I'd been doing this personal training business on the side, basically working my evenings and weekends and any time that I could outside of rugby to make some money and build a business and like have this little nest egg, which was arguably part of the reason why it might have limited me from rugby because I was trying to do two things.
So how long of a period were you doing that as you were playing the whole time?
The whole time, yeah, the whole time. Because again, for some people, the salaries that they're on is like enough for them, right? Because it is enough to live. But for me and like my mindset and like I just thought I was worth more than what I was getting paid for the effort that I put in. And equally, I was really passionate about coaching people. And I've been doing it to fund my way. Initially, leaving university, I was doing it to fund myself back into rugby. Then it became something that like I genuinely loved changing people's lives. I knew that I was good at it. I had a waiting list of people that wanted to train with me. So it became something that like, and when you build a business or you put so much time into it, like you get quite protective over making sure that it can still, it can still continue. So I was doing that alongside my England Sevens career as well.
Was that tough? Like in terms of like the mentality of reaching a place that you'd always worked for and still having to work your evenings and work, the odd days here and there just to make up. Was that difficult in a sense that you'd like put so many hours into your dream, you got your dream, but you're still having to put extra work in just to maintain a level of probably financial accountability that you needed?
100%. But when you're 25 to 20, whatever age I was, 24 to 27, you're probably in your prime in terms of like energy seems so abundant, right? You never feel tired. So I think it was just in a period of my time where like I was really passionate about the two things that I was doing. I felt as though I could give my all to rugby and I felt as though I could give my all to my personal training business. Again, looking back with a bit of like perspective, I probably wasn't able to do both things to the level in which I probably should have done. But it meant that I had a taste of professional rugby for a couple of years and traveled the world and represented my country. And then I could go out of rugby back to something that like already had arms and legs and was kicking on, which is arguably why I had the investment, the capital to be able to put into the first gym and all those things that maybe accelerated my career now in the fitness space. There's a number of things, situational, finances, credibility already from rugby, all those bits and pieces. So I would never change it. Like genuinely when people say, what would you change? I would never change any of those things. I maybe have gone down different paths. I probably would have gone back into rugby if I didn't have personal training and had the career till 32, playing for some championship rugby team. But still, like now, like 3-4 years later, no one knew who the fuck I was within rugby, right? So I wouldn't change those things. But yeah, so that's kind of how it went down. I was doing both. I felt like I could do both at the time. There was obviously times when it was very demanding, but I felt as I managed. Left England Sevens and went back to play a season at this semi-pro club. And there was genuinely times where I was fortunate that I didn't need to train Tuesday nights because the coach was like, he doesn't need to train Tuesday nights. So I'd just rock up on Thursday, do the team run. Obviously, that didn't go down necessarily with the rest.
I was going to say, what was the mix like in the team after Ollie Marchon coming back after playing for Sevens?
I think
was there any animosity?
No, I had good rapport with the boys. Like, obviously, rugby banter's like, you're never going to get around that, whether you're liked or disliked, you're just going to get shit. But so I rocked up Thursday, did the team run, and then I'd play on Saturday. But I found myself more often than not coming into the change room at half time, only just realising that I was playing rugby. Like,
really?
I hadn't touched the ball because I didn't go looking for it. And like I'm sitting in the change room and I'd almost like have it like come around and be like, oh shit, it's like half time. I've done nothing and my just head's not here. And there was just so many times where I walked off the pitch at full time. Like you're not doing yourself justice. People probably think like, who's this guy? And I think going back, it was that 6 months where the coach, or that situation just wasn't managed very well because I was a young, like rugby player that gave my all to it and probably didn't get, it wasn't that I didn't necessarily need recognition. I just needed that transition back out of my dream to be a little bit more seamless.
Do you, like on reflection, do you think about like where your head was, or do you just think in terms of when you was playing, it all sort of felt like a blur until you sat down, like you said, and thought, shit, I've just played
Mate, if
rugby.
Like I say, that last 18 months, the 12 months with Old Albanians was the club, and the 6 months with England just all seemed like a blur. Like it, and that's probably why I try to distance myself from the rugby player being as my identity for so long, because like the rugby player I became was not the rugby player that I was in the years prior to that. Like so. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty shit time. It just got to the stage where I was walking off the pitch, wasn't performing. It was like I was picking up a little bit of money. It was nice for the weekend and stuff, but like it was, and my business was like something that I was becoming more and more passionate about. Like it was gaining momentum. So yeah, I mean, it's weird thinking about it, man. Like you always want to try and play, and everyone say to you like you're a long time retired. Like play until you physically can't. And like make it more about play now that you're not trying to search. That's not going to be your career and the thing that puts food on the table. But now it can genuinely be about play and maybe what it was when you first started as a young teenager. But all the play had gone out of it. Like I felt such distaste for the sport and who I'd become within the sport as a rugby player. So, and then it sort of spiraled even further. Like I say, I got pulled towards my passion of fitness. I was delivering loads and loads and loads of training sessions, like too much, right? I think everyone does when you've got this little business. You're overworking, you're constantly chasing your tail with the other things around a business. Like there's obviously that delivery, you're trying to market yourself, you're trying to do some customer service stuff, you're writing your programming, you're trying to manage your finances and all those things. So
and this was all you, right, at this time?
Yes. Yeah. So there was myself and this other trainer that for a point in time we were going to start a gym together. But we quickly realised that whilst we had lots of similarities, there was a few things that we weren't probably right to be business partners, and it was a bit of a blessing, really. So we'd already found this facility. I say a facility. It was an old cattle shed which we transformed into a at the time an all right little strength and conditioning facility, and we decided the 11th hour to just run our businesses separately under the same roof, which obviously becomes a little bit difficult because it's two competing businesses in a small town. And even though you're trying to like make sure that both people can win, when one gets a little bit busy than the other, there's like, it becomes a bit of underlying tension. So we kind of rolled with that for a couple of years. I got to the stage where I was just delivering too many sessions. I was chasing, I don't really know what I was chasing. It didn't become about the money because I had all the money that I needed as a whatever, 20-something year old. I was buying all the things that I wanted to buy, spending money on stupid shit. But you couldn't drag me off the sofa at the weekend because I was too tired. I wouldn't spend my money because I knew how hard I'd work to try and earn it. I wouldn't go on holiday because of my attachment to the fact that I wouldn't be working. So it was just a really bad place to be in, because no one teaches you really how to grow a business and like what success may look like, or how to reverse engineer from what you're trying to get to. So I got to a stage where I had some money, and I was like, right, it's do or die. I'm either gonna invest this money into like doing something in fitness which is more sustainable and has more longevity, or I'm going to just go and work in the city. That was like pretty much what I decided. I'll go and do something else. I had a high performing mindset. I loved, like, whether it was sales, whether it was finance, I don't really know. A lot of my clients obviously worked in finance, and they were like come into the office and just come and learn on the floor, which was what a lot of rugby players would do towards the end of their career. Anyway, decided to invest into the original Marchon Athletic. But like I said, the spiral of identity change or identity crisis, to be honest, like looking back, like I just didn't know who the fuck I was. I didn't know how to construct a life that allowed me to gain fulfillment from all the things I enjoyed: training, eating well, socializing, building relationships, like doing meaningful work, helping people. Like I was seeing some people, like even to the point where I was seeing some people once a week and some people 3 times a week. And I found myself wanting to spend all the time with the people I see 3 times a week, because 1, I've got more rapport with them, but 2, their training and their progress is far, far accelerated because they're training 3 times a week. But the people that was training 1 time a week, like that's all they could afford. And even with the best intention around me writing them a training program to do some independent training, like they're not motivated to go and train by themselves. So like it wasn't their fault, but like that's the nature of the beast when it costs back then, whatever it was, 50 quid an hour to come train.
And at that time, did you understand that you had a passion for it, or was it just something that, like I said, you got busy after losing an identity in terms of rugby? You just followed that because it was something that was building. Did you understand at the time that you were passionate for it, or was it just you were putting in a lot of hours into something that was building and it was just necessary for you to do so?
I always knew I was passionate about coaching. Like even like I say, growing up, I loved my PE teachers because they were like getting me better at something that I was so passionate about. Like I fucking love PE. I loved my rugby coaches because they were getting me better at something. I love my S&C coach, Tim, who owns Dynamic Shoulders now. Like hopefully he'll be a guest on here at some stage. Like he was one of my early mentors. He coached me S&C at university, got me back from my ACL injury. And then he went on to deliver my sort of practical masters in strength and conditioning. So coaching was always massive for me. And like I said, I loved what my physical and mental transformation in the gym from a young age, because of the knowledge people imparting me, whether it was like my S&C coaches or just other people in the gym, kind of coaching you through things. So in the gym, on the pitch, even in school, I love people that would pass on knowledge to try and better me at something that I was really interested in. So it was 110% a passion. When it got to the stage where I was starting my gym, or towards the latter stage of me being that one-to-one coach that I mentioned, I knew how good I was. Like I was really good, right? And it was the proof was in the pudding, and the results that my clients got. My sort of philosophy and style on coaching and how I wanted to coach people was influenced from traveling the world, being in different gyms, being coached by all of these elite strength and conditioning coaches, just studying the industry from all the guest speakers that I could go and see, all the podcasts that I could listen to, all the books that I could read. Like I was well studied in the subject. So 100% of passion, otherwise I wouldn't put all that time into it. It's just, like I say, when a passion becomes something that you're trying to grow as a business, without any guidance around those kind of things, like you don't really know where to put your energy, and before you know it, you have no energy left because the thing that you're so passionate about sucked it all out of you. So, yeah, that was my transition from rugby into starting the original Marchon Athletic. And like I said, that it was a tough time for me physically and mentally transitioning because of identity shift that I didn't know what I was shifting into, and I didn't understand the job role of becoming a business owner.
And in the last podcast, obviously, we talked a lot about family. I don't want to go too much into it. I think we built a pretty good picture of your parents, your brother, your sister, in terms of your support network and everything about sort of what might have had a big influence on what's made you who you are today. But in terms of, we did touch on the fact that your dad is always, in terms of the professionalism, he was always looking at that as something that was quite important. And when it came to being a sports star, maybe that didn't line up so well initially until you'd made that a reality. In terms of then transitioning out of being a sports star or a competitive athlete into a business owner, what was that like in terms of the dynamic? Was that a conversation you had with him, or in terms of who did you lean on for the business side of things?
No one, I think, originally. Like back then, you're listening, like you're reading things like things that aren't particularly helpful, like the 4-hour work week, and just like there's like the people that are just like out there hustling, like work, being like an entrepreneur. Again, that word wasn't really used back then as it is this day, like every sort of second word when you talk in the business world. But back then it was just about like, there was a massive hustle culture in the fitness industry. Like everyone was grinding and grafting to try and break through. It was still very much in its infancy. There was no one really in the fitness space besides bodybuilders that had reached the height of bodybuilding and still become relevant because they'd started a supplement brand, or they'd started coaching people, or they'd started a gym off the back of their name. There was no one really in the, I'd call it the mainstream fitness space, who was of an age or had like notoriety that you could follow and look up to and understand. But there were more experienced older coaches in the professional sports world, at universities, at sports clubs, etc. And that was a route that maybe initially I thought I'd go down. Again, when I think about my time coming out of education, when rugby finished, that's the route I wanted to go down. But again, my time in rugby at the level in which I played, I realised that you can't make a great living off that. And being a coach, probably even worse, particularly being a strength and conditioning coach. And the jobs are few and far between. You know, back then there was I forget what it was. I think UK Sport. So UK Sport used to have a website and a newsletter, a job board, and there'd regularly be jobs going out, like intern S&C at Middlesex Cricket Club, whatever. It's like unpaid. All these jobs were unpaid, and you had to earn your stripes. And a lot of the jobs would be going to people like who you know, not what you know. So a lot of the jobs would be going to ex-pros that had retired or picked up an injury, or that the club already knew about, and they'd be giving them a job. And that's not like, that wasn't exclusively the case, but that's kind of how it went down. So again, I was trying to marry up my passion for being a coach and my passion for like high performance, like a mindset towards training, like it genuinely means something, with the fact that I'd been brought up in a privileged manner, and that my family was successful successful is the way people would deem it from a financial standpoint. Like I wanted a certain quality of life, and that only came from like, there was certain jobs that you could take within the fitness space that would get you there, and owning a business seemed like the best one.
So what was step one then, in terms of coming out of rugby? You'd had the thing on the side that you were running. And was step one involved in that, or was there another sort of start to the march on?
So I think the probably the bit that I've sort of skipped over is came out of England Sevens and was a bit of an inflection point of like, where do I go from here? Like I said, is it rugby? Is it fitness? I decided it was fitness, and I actually left the keys to the gym to Alex, who's now the head coach at Marchon Harpenden, to my clients. So he took over this cattle shed, and he coached my then clients, because he was working as like a junior strength and conditioning coach at Saracens. Right, so he was doing the jobs that I've mentioned. He was like working his way up, and he'd done that straight out of uni. So he was now 4 years into that process. So he was gaining some momentum, albeit the momentum is slow naturally in that industry. So he had some time off because it was off season. I wanted to go to America because I was like, I just need a break. I'm going to go to America. I don't think we spoke about this in the last episode.
No.
So I went to America, and I went to Santa Monica, and I stayed there for like 3 or 4 months. I basically ended up playing sevens for Santa Monica Dolphins. We went to the American, I captained them. We went to the American Sevens Championships, and I basically toured all the gyms on the like, sort of West Coast, LA area.
Where did that come from? Were you invited out to do that, or was it you needed to go to America anyway?
I genuinely think I at the time I was like, the American dream is like for me. Like American rugby was becoming. Was gathering, like I say, a little bit of pace. Like they were getting better on the World 7 Series. There was some English players going over there for more like quality of life, and like trying to see like, could this rugby thing and quality of life work out? But also I knew that the fitness industry was so progressive over there, and I just needed to get away. But I didn't really want to go traveling like I had done before, because I've been traveling before, because I thought that was a bit more of a way. Like I couldn't really do that 26, 27 years old. At least I didn't think I could, because it wasn't productive. Whereas America, it's kind of like I'm learning about how arguably the most progressive fitness industry in the world is doing things, and elite sport is like being a strength and conditioning coach in America is like you earn hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I wanted to go and learn over there. So I basically spent my days at UCLA, which is a university in LA, at the athletics track with a sprint coach. I was sprinting 4 or 5 times a week, and then I was going to the gyms around Santa Monica and LA, and then I was playing sevens. And I was actually working as a shop boy in a bar to make some cash. Because I
didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't talk about it much. If you've been to West Hollywood, you might know about the joints that I'm going to and the sort of people that hang out there. But it was basically topless waitering, selling shots in a bar.
Any interesting stories you want to
we'll leave it there because I'll get myself in trouble. But I mean, I could sell a lot of shots, so I was making bank. Well, you can't work in America, right? Like you can't just rock up there and get a job,
right?
But you can get a little bit of cash in hand. And I just burned through so much cash. I say I burnt through cash, but again, it goes back to the fact that like I always wanted to make money. Yeah. I had a job from like 14 years old. I was always making my own money. I started as a washing pots and dishes at 14 years old. Then it's like bar back. Then bar back, I went to be a barman. And barman, I was like head of a bar. These are all when I was at school, at university, at uni. Like I was always making money. I was always thinking about how I can make money. So going to America is the same thing. I don't want to be there for 3 months, spending money and not earning a penny. So that was my sort of mentality. But yeah, so that was great. So again, the reason I tell that story is because I was influenced heavy by the way people did things in America. But it also told me that American dream that I was after, like I genuinely thought I was going to move there. I'm going to find this American chick. Like this is the way. Being in LA taught me that like where I was back home, I had it good. Like I'd always been, I think, a grass is always greener somewhere else kind of guy, like in my mindset. In fact, yeah, 100% I had, like, not really settled. Like all I thought and talked about was rugby. Like I mistreated all the other good relationships that come into my life. And LA was sort of like the final nail in the coffin to be like, just fucking now grow up and go back and give this a proper crack. So came back from there.
What was it about LA that you think sort of turned that? Was it a multitude of things? Or obviously we went to LA last year and you told me, you know, how LA was going to be and the types of people, etc. Was there anything you could sort of pinpoint to think that actually at home is actually where I need to be?
I think like America is great for people that have got, or LA it seemed just like a place where there's like a melting pot of talent, but they're not talented enough. And I didn't want to be in that situation again where I've like got some talent, but I'm not talented enough. Like, whereas, like I say, I felt as though I could really change the game given my professional sporting background now, my understanding of who I wanted to be as a coach, my influence from being around the world and around the industry to really create something really cool. Whereas I thought in America, I'm just going to become like everyone else here, where like you're there's like inflated optimism and positivity, which is infectious and great, but can sometimes just become too much. Like your Uber driver is trying to tell you that they're a famous actor, and it's like, you're fucking driving my Uber, like. So it's cool, but it just wasn't for me. And Harpenden's a small town, but you forget how privileged you are in a town like this, where there's like, you can be in an airport in 15 minutes and fly to anywhere in Europe. You can be on the motorway and drive all the way up north if you need to go there. You can get into London on the train in 20 minutes. And the people here are uber successful and uber like, just like, if you get the rub, you're only one conversation away from like potentially even like changing the trajectory that you're on. So I just realized that like being back home was what I needed. And if I could build something of greatness here, then I would be able to go to America anytime I wanted for whatever reason that I wanted. So came back from there, and that's where I did, having had a great time playing rugby out there for Santa Monica Dolphins. Came back and played that 12 months, like I said, with Old Albanians. So that was that. But when I started the gym, to go back to your original question, it was all in. So I had about 30 to 40,000 pounds. I can't really remember the exact figure. And I had this studio that I'd done, this cattle shed, which was a bit like, there was different branded stuff, because it was basically just like a mismatch of stuff that we could afford. And as we could afford it, we earned a bit more money, we'd invest into the gym. So it was almost like this like really ugly looking thing that we were so proud of, because it was like a collection of kit that we made that we got over the couple of years. So when I wanted to start the new gym, I wanted everything. I wanted it to be like my experience of going to America and going to these universities and going to these sports clubs, where like there was just like, it was all uniform, and you walked in there and you're like, fuck yeah, I want to train in this place. And that's where the connection came with Black Box and Greg, so the founder of Black Box. At the time, Black Box isn't the company it is today, right? Like he was very much at the start-ish of his journey, a little bit further down the track than I was with my gym. So he flew over. I spent a lot of time talking to him each week, and we created this cool little studio. And at the time, I thought it was like the best gym in the world.
Was that your first taste of what like a brand looked like in terms of what it was for you?
Yeah, exactly. So the gym was called Marchon Athletic. That was the business that we started. It was myself, it was Chad, and it was Alex. And it was all kitted out in black box, and like we were so fucking proud of this gym. It was my life savings that had gone into it. We moved across my client base into the gym, and before we knew it, like we were just having people show up at our door, like wanting to be trained. And we started to dabble with this small group training thing. So we were starting to build this community. We were training people in groups. Like the buzz around the gym was amazing, and like success just seemed to sort of snowball. And the sort of clients we were having goes back to this 1 a week versus 3 a week thing. I was now able to see people 2, 3, 4 times a week. Progress was so much more accelerated. The connection you have to your clients was so much better. Like this word community that everyone bands around, I finally understood what that meant. Because as a one-to-one practitioner, you're building this business, but you don't have a community. You just have these like 10 hours a day where you're just seeing this one person, then this next person, this next person. Whereas now, like we had this community. It was amazing. And then we got to the stage where like, okay, now we're busy. We need to hire a member of staff, and like all these things that before I knew it, 12 months into it, like we were having the foundations of a business that had some legs. Again, I wasn't in a great place physically or mentally. Like the business was getting better, and maybe I had to suffer to allow the business to get to where it got to in that amount of time. Maybe not. Again, it's just a lesson I don't really know. I wouldn't change it.
I want to touch just briefly on the good and the bad of that period.
Yeah.
So the good, I mean, you were smiling the whole time saying that. If anyone's listening, go and watch the video because that's the most I've seen you smile in a while. The
man's tired.
The reason I think you're smiling is like it sounds like this was the first taste of the business, right? This was the first taste of like you and your brother and Al putting something together and seeing progress in terms of more clients, a buzz, the community building. You probably started feeling like this could be something more or bigger than it is.
Yeah.
What was that like at that time? Because it's like the first time probably you'd felt that, right? You hadn't done business before then. You'd been part of teams and getting a paycheck, but it wasn't something that you'd built. Do you sort of reflect on that and the good bits of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, it sounds like counterintuitive because we end up calling it Marchon Athletic, but the biggest thing for me, like I said, was when I was doing the one-to-one thing, it was that people were coming to see specifically me. And that's great for a period of time until you no longer have time, and then you're so much in demand that you're like, fuck, I can't even live my life anymore. So when we started the gym, I wanted it to be about a team of coaches. I wanted it to be about a brand, the name, and not my. I want the name above the door, and not my name. I know it became my name above the door, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So just to see that happen was sick. Like to know that people could come and knock on the door and train, and they didn't need to be trained by me, and they'd still get the service, and they'd still get the results, and they'd still get all those things, was like, then I think you onto something. And then you hear about the way people talk about, not you, but the way they talk about your brand and everything that it resembles, and the people that it resembles. That was just, I think that was just really special. And like I say, like having like sharing it with other people and having other people around was really important. I'd gone from being in a team environment, which I loved, to then being this one-to-one coach, which was quite isolating. And I isolated myself from a lot of situations and opportunities I had to try and reintegrate into a social life because of the reasons: tired, overworked, stressed, didn't know how to operate, gave up drinking. Like all these things were sort of situational to why I maybe ended up where I did. But the gym allowed me to be working alongside my brother, my best mate, coming into contact with more people, seeing the way people talked about our brand and the services that we put out. So yeah, it was an exciting time. I mean, you all, in any stage of business, and any business owner will know this, like when you're in the fire, like when you're in it, you just don't really realize how cool the thing is and the opportunity that you and the team have. Because we're in it again now, right? With everything that's going on in the business, like you know it, everyone else knows it. Like we're in this period of like, there's been this period of change, now there's a period of growth, and like we're all hands to the pump. I reckon in 6 months' time we'll probably look back at it and again smile like and laugh if we talk about it. So I think that was the reason I was smiling is because looking back now, we were just a couple of guys having a crack at something. I risked all the money that all the money that I had a 1-year lease. they were like, you got a 1 year lease. I mean, it's all stuff you don't do. There was no real contract. Like we just had a crack. Because I sort of was at peace with the fact that I'm going to spend this money. I know we can make the money back in a year based on the model that I sort of put together. So I can at least make my investment back. So in a year's time, I'd have given something a go to keep me in the fitness industry, and at least I'll have my investment back. And then if it doesn't work, and the lease doesn't roll forward, then I'll go and do the city thing that I thought I was going to do. If it does work, and it's either going to work and we just like bumble along, or it's going to work and we fucking kick on and accelerate like where we can maybe go with this.
It's cool to hear, because I think, especially like you said about the entrepreneur, people talking about that word a lot recently. You hear it on podcasts and everyone sort of talking about who that person is as an entrepreneur, the grind culture people talk about. And it's nice to hear that your mindset at that time was, I'm going to give it the best go I can. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's about trying, because it's not like you said, it has to work. It has to be a success. I'm going to do everything I can to make it a success, which you did. But it was more about investing into an idea that you had and putting everything into it and seeing what happened, right?
Yeah. I think for me, like there's been periods throughout my rugby career, or my childhood, my rugby career, my business career, where I'm like, the most important thing is like me. So long as I'm in a good place and I can get after this, like it's going to be successful to whatever degree. And if I'll cut my losses, and like I cut my losses in rugby, right? It's like the upside of doing this for the next 2-3 years doesn't actually seem that attractive. Whereas this calculated risk of doing this gym, again, the upside, that's attractive. Let's give it a go. If I got to the end of year one and we hadn't got to a stage where we could build team, we hadn't increased the membership base, like the model wasn't working, like I just move on. So long as I was passionate about what I was doing, I was happy just to keep moving from the thing to the next thing to see if it works. I mean, luckily for us, I mean, a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs, they talk about it being the fourth business idea they have to start. But for me, it wasn't about, it was just about waking up and just being excited to go to work again. I'd got to the stage where I'd wake up and I was just like a zombie going in to coach people. When I was playing rugby in the sort of like in those best years, I'm waking up, I'm going to breakfast in the hotel because we used to stay in London for 3 days every week at Sevens camp. I'm telling the waitress that I like my eggs this certain way. Like everything about it was just amazing. And when we started the gym, Marchon Athletic, it was like we wake up, we're going to put on the Marchon Athletic like uniform. We're going to go to a place of work wearing the uniform that we want to wear. I could walk to work. So like my start to the day was amazing. I'm walking to work. I'm going to meet my brother, my best mate, who I spend all my time with. People are going to come there to this gym that we built, that we designed, and pay us money. And when they're going to leave thinking, that's the fucking best hour of my day. So everything about it was just great. There was other things that I had to take care of, but that was a learning curve that I just need to go through the process to get there. And by that I mean like I was still overworking and not filling my cup back up from like a psychological or even like physical place, because when you're trying to start a business or when you're trying to start anything, particularly when you spent all your money on it, you don't have an off switch. But what I've come to learn is that like as an entrepreneur or someone that thinks the way I think, you're constantly on. You just then have to find ways through maturity and perspective and lessons to make sure that you can remain constantly on by turning off or turning it down at certain times to fill your cup back up.
And you mentioned in that time period, although exciting, busy, everything going in an upward manner, your physical and mental health was maybe taking a bit of a back seat.
Yeah.
What did that look like in that period? What did it amount to, and what sort of lessons did you learn?
I think like abusing fitness as an outlet is like, so where I got to was because of that, again, that sort of like hustle culture or the things you're consuming is like, you need to be up at 4 o'clock. And if you're not working on your business, you're not going to be successful, and like always thinking about what's next and what have you. So where I got to was like, I just couldn't relax. I found it really hard to relax. And I go back to my rugby days, and it's like when you're on the pitch, you're fucking on. And then like you knew that you had to go and have an afternoon nap because you had afternoon training, and it was like the done thing. And you sort of like mirror what everyone else is doing, right? So you go eat and you just go chill out, you put your feet up, you watch shit TV, and then you go back to training. Whereas when you're trying to build a business, you don't know what the fuck you should be doing. Like sitting on the sofa and watching Netflix just doesn't feel right.
In terms of like, did you feel the guilt that like?
Yeah, you're just guilty the whole time. Yeah. You're guilty. And so the only other thing I like doing other than like, so it was either like coach sessions, right? That was like one thing we had to do. And then there's like the admin side of it, like the operational side, which I didn't really enjoy, but it was like a necessity. So I'm spending time doing that. The only other thing in my life at the time was like training. So I just train more. But there's only so much like you can lift weights. So then I started like doing endurance shit because I'm like, that's going to fill more time. So I was like running, swimming. I mean, yeah, like just shit that wasn't, I was a strength and power athlete that was like 88 kilos, which for my frame was a lot of weight, strong. And then I'd become this like wiry, skinny 76 kilo little melt. And it was a byproduct of the fact that like I was so stressed, like chronic stress about trying to make the business work and working like and not relaxing. So, and I still hadn't got over the identity thing. I still hadn't got over rugby. Like I said, like you can't take a kid from 14 that's like chasing a dream to 27 or 26. I can't remember exactly what I was. And then you go cold turkey. I went cold turkey on rugby. I went cold turkey on drinking alcohol. I went cold turkey on anything other than martial athletic growing. And fuck knows why Lauren, like how Lauren stuck around, but she did.
Where did you meet Lauren in this timeline?
I met Lauren when she was 18. So like way before that. So I met her, random story. I just met her at a party. So the guy whose party it was had an older brother who was in my year, and the elder brother wanted like some elder people there just to make sure that nothing went wrong. So right. we were a few years older than them, and so I was just at the party, and she was leaving at the end, and I was just kind of like, "What's your name?" And then I just messaged her on Facebook like afterwards. But I mean, there'd been like a 5-6 year period where we hadn't really become an official thing. But at this stage of my life, at 27 years old, me and her I think we were living together. Yeah, we were living together. We bought the relationship. Oh, I've gone on a tangent. The relationship was pretty shit, to be honest. I was like trying to do this, came out of rugby, trying to do this business thing. She was like wanting to see the world and became BA cabin crew. So, and cabin crew's a brutal job. Like, you think running a business is tough. Like, being cabin crew is terrible, particularly for a female. Horrible. Time zones, all that kind of stuff. And like for her, I think it's a young person's job, but I think it's also like a single person's job, because when you go to Vegas or South Africa or Australia, you like lived your best life, and then you come back to the UK when you're like between flights, and then you just sleep, right? Whereas she would come back to the UK and she had a boyfriend. So she was trying to like make sure she saw me and be around at weekends and what have you in between flights, but then also have a good time when she was out there. So she was doing that. So she was in like a bit of a like, I guess, an okay place. And I was like this fucking retired rugby player that didn't know what the fuck he was doing, that was trying to do the business. So we were just in a shit place, but we moved in together. And like 9 months after that, so I was 28, 29, 30, don't know how old I was, 28, 29, 30. She fell pregnant with Leo, so that obviously accelerated everything from us. Anyway, that's a tangent.
I think it's all part of it. I to be honest, I'd forgotten that you and Lauren's relationship was amongst this timeline. I think it's important to know, because it does sound like, especially you giving your all into a business that you're trying to start, as well as trying to balance a relationship, is probably, especially when you're probably speaking to younger people now who want to get into business and are trying to balance like a dating scene and whatnot. Yeah. It's like, how did that work its way into starting a business? Obviously now with the whole brand, we know Lauren, how supportive she is of you, even now working big hours in London or across seas. How do you think like the support of someone like that, and even having a kid, did that change things in terms of how you looked at the business and what you wanted to make of it?
I mean, Lauren's very unique, and there's other examples of women around the business and people that we know, members that I know that have got really supporting either husbands or wives or partners, right? So she's very unique. Those people are out there. She's not the only one. But I think because of everything that she endured with young Ollie, from like sort of 21 to 25, whenever I met her, it's just this little, like, say little, I was a ledge. But just like she endured all of that, right? Because again, she's young, naive, doesn't really know like whether that is how she should be treated. I got to a stage where I realized that that's not how you fucking treat someone. Again, it's just a lesson. Like, I wasn't to know any different. So I think because she endured all that, and she sort of stuck with me where it was always like rugby's first, everyone else is second. And then it got to the stage where I was getting a little bit more mature, and I realized that it was actually in America when I realized that like someone like Lauren was exactly what I needed. You know, I said about that American dream and like going over there and thinking there was like the grass was greener, but I realized that wasn't the case. And it actually got to the stage where she eventually told me to fuck off because I can't remember what that situation was. She told me that she was no longer going to be around for me. I went to Hong Kong on a rugby trip, and then went from Hong Kong to Thailand to meet Chad, who was traveling. He'd been to Australia, and I was like, I don't need you either. So I went over there. And obviously when I'm in Hong Kong and Thailand, I'm having the time of my life thinking like, I don't need her. Like, it's all good. And then I get back and I'm like, she was the one constant through all those things that I was like, I need her back. So she made me chase her for a very, 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 very long period of time. But then we got back together. I mean, that still didn't change the fact that she was cabin crew and I was trying to build this business, and it was tough. But by then we'd been through so much that like we knew that no matter how hard it got for each of us in the sort of careers that we were trying to pursue, having each other was going to be was what we needed. So I think Leo, like falling pregnant with Leo, was an accelerant. I think just like the bit that I remember from back then is that I just didn't have any drive around anything other than my business, because I just wanted it to work. I didn't want to have another failure. Again, if it failed, I'd find a way to move on to the next thing. But I didn't want to have another failure, because when you start getting to that age in life, and like I said, when you realize the shelf life that certain times of your life have, some people want to spend their whole 20s like traveling and like living, and I think it's really admirable. Like, you're very different. You went straight into work in your teens. Like, you wanted to come work here at 22. Like, so people are wired in different ways, and I think I was just wired to be successful at every age from 14 years old. Like, I wanted to have cash at 14, 15 years old. I wanted to buy the latest stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's that period of my life, mate. It basically culminated in a period where, like I said, I got to about 76 kilos in body weight, not intentionally. I walk around 84 now, so that's like 8 kilos. Lost all my strength, lost all my drive for everything. And there was like this, I've told the story many times, there was just this time in the gym where I was trying to jump on a box that was probably no higher than this table, and I had no power, no strength to be able to jump on the box. Uber frustrating, so I ended up having to go to the doctors, and they were like, yeah, you're pretty fucked. So I'd gone from like this 26-year-old specimen from rugby to this 28-year-old, 29-year-old like shell of a human. So then there was just like lifestyle changes I had to make, and
what was it about that moment? Because you've told this story before. Have you reflected on why that turning point sort of happened, in terms of like, why was it then that you thought, I need to do something about this, or I need to at least explore what this frustration is amounted to?
I think because I'd killed the athlete. Like the rugby player that I was, I mean, lose the rugby title, right? It was the athlete. I was the fastest in school. I was the strongest in school. I was the strongest at university. Like, I mean, maybe technically like more power to weight ratio, but like I was always the top athlete. It just so happened that rugby was a sport that I played. When I went to America, I was fucking fast. I was like in a sprint group with NFL players, and I killed the athlete by doing too much fitness, like by doing endurance stuff, because I was trying to punish myself. Well, no, I wasn't trying to punish myself. I was trying to stay productive in a 24-hour window, sleeping, training, which I thought was working, and working. So I think that was the turning point. I was like, everything that you really enjoy doing, like being really strong and fit and confident and all those things, you've killed that person. So. And again, that was the identity, right? I didn't think a business owner. I thought me as a business owner didn't need to be the athlete. I thought I had to take on this business owner thing.
It's interesting that this self-destruction came from what got you to the perceived value of the athlete.
Yeah,
is actually you ended up using that same means to take that away from yourself.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's when you look back at it, it's mad. But you look at someone who's 27 years old that's never put a rugby ball down, now no longer picks one up. Someone that's 27 years old that from the earliest age possible, I would compete in everything. Like, you couldn't do anything with me without it turning into a competition. And I would do all I could to win the competition, even if it was like the competition was just in my head and you didn't know I was competing, but I'm still going to fucking win. You know how Hunter spoke on the podcast?
Yeah.
I was like that. You fucking not going to beat me anything. And from 27 to whatever age it was, 32, I didn't have an ounce in my body of being competitive within sport. I was just going to be competitive with myself within business. And I didn't even know what success looked like because I didn't have anyone. There's no like, again, in sport, you have idols, you have people that you look up to. In business, there's no one in the fitness industry owning a gym that you can look up to. Like there's people in business, and like I say, they're the people I'm trying to copy, but it's a different business. Like the different businesses doesn't really work. So I just got it wrong for like 5 years, ruined the athlete that I was, and didn't compete in anything. So arguably, I missed those great years where I could have gone into jiu-jitsu at that time. I could have gone into MMA. I could have gone into could have just carried on playing recreational rugby. I could have done anything just to keep that going. Again, I don't regret any of that because the time I invested into my business, albeit at some stages detrimental for my health and well-being, probably gave me a competitive advantage over other people. And I rode a wave of a time when private micro gyms where there was an opportunity, low barrier to entry. There wasn't many around. I was an early adopter to this small group training model. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't fucking change it, but.
So then what was the next step for you after that incident had happened where you sort of had that reflection point? Did you realize at that point what had happened in terms of what you'd done to yourself and why it happened? Or is that only on reflection from now that you can see that?
Did I realize? Do you know, around that sort of time as well, I think I'm sort of like trying to rack my brains. Movember started becoming more and more on my radar. And there's a guy that a lot of people might know called Fergus Crawley, who tried to take his own life because of, again, I don't know his reasons, but the situation he was in led him to that stage. He reached out to me, he was like, I'm doing a Movember challenge at WIT, and it was like a I think it was a 13-hour workout to represent something to do with like male suicide. And he was like, I really want you to come to it because you were like, I was gaining a bit of a name for myself in the fitness space with what we were doing with Marchon Athletic. And he was like, I want you to come to it. So I went to that. And then I think a year later, we did the Ollie Marchon, myself and Chad, which was a marathon ski, straight into a marathon bike, straight into a marathon run. And around these sort of times, I started to just do a little bit more like reflection of like checking in with myself a little bit more about how is my headspace and what the fuck was the last 5 years all about. Looking back at the last six months of rugby and thinking like, okay, was there something going on there that then led to that next 12 months of rugby and then something, and I think that was that's where I landed, and they were the excuses I was making for my behaviour and where I got to. But like I said, it goes back to like even now, right? Like men need to talk more. I mean, we're really on a tangent, but like men need to talk more, but you don't know it until either someone presents it to you, or you're really self-aware, or it's just like topical. But back then it wasn't topical, particularly in rugby. So I don't think I knew it. I think, and again, I've tried to do lots of reflection on it. I think the Movember thing and those events that I did first with Fergus, which like it really drew me into Movember and what it stood for. I think there was 13 of us, or there was 11 of us at WIT, basically for 11 hours or 13 hours. I can't remember the exact format. Just doing these stations round and round and round and round again, and it was fucking amazing. We raised loads of money, and I think I personally, because of the Marchon Army, I think I came like top 3 fundraisers that year. The following year, myself and Charlie did the Ollie Marchon, and again I think we came like number 1, or I think we actually ended up number 2 because we didn't get the last bit of money in, but we would have been number 1 fundraisers. So again, I was like just in that space a little bit more about understanding maybe what the fuck I've been through, and I was just thinking more about it. At least I think that's kind of what happened. But like I said, that 5 years was a bit of a blur.
Interesting. And in terms of what's next, I kind of want to save the building of Marchon as it is today for another episode. I think there's enough to talk about probably for 10 more episodes on what's happened from the end of what we've just talked about till now, because there's been so much development.
Yeah.
Do you think that covers up to about the start of where
Yeah, I think so. I think we should wrap up with like Marchon Athletic. The gym that we're talking about was founded in 2016, and we'll probably pick back up in 2019 when we open Marchon Gym or Marchon HQ as people know it today. So it was a 3-year period of us basically like kicking this 1-year rolling lease on and on and on, reinvesting into the gym, reinvesting into the team, the likes of Eamon, and we're suddenly coming into like the first exposure we had to like hiring staff. Jens became a more prominent person in my life. We started the Stronger Coaches Academy. So that was the first sort of iteration of what became our education business. We actually met playing rugby, finished around the same sort of time, very similar mindsets, a lot of synergy, complement each other's the way we work really well. He's a little bit more considered. Like he's got a temper, but he can manage it. I'm a bit more of a hothead, and we'll just fucking say what I think. But we were, again, both passionate about coaching, but then also really like grateful for the lives that we were beginning to build for ourselves. And we were getting contacted by other coaches and younger people coming through and like, how'd you do this? Like, can you teach me? And for us, it was all about like being a great coach first, and the other stuff would follow. So I was learning a little bit more the operational side about running a business through trial and error, and from just trying to gain experience from wherever I could. But what we were really good at was coaching people and like getting people results. So I think that's probably a good time to wrap it up.
And just to sort of wrap this last episode off, obviously it was a really important first episode we did in terms of the building of who you are.
Yeah.
This episode was more the middle part of your life in terms of finding out what it was you wanted to do after that period that you'd reached. What do you think one lesson that you could pick out of that time period we've just talked about would be, in terms of if someone's listening, they may be going through a similar thing with sports or in terms of starting a business, anything like that? Was there one thing that you could pick out that, on reflection now, that it was a big lesson for you? I mean, there's a million in the episode, so if
I don't know, because I like to think that, like, that's probably why we started the mentorship, right, for gym owners. I like to think that because I've probably had more experience in different arenas of my life than probably I talk about a lot. But I like to think because of all of those experiences and lessons, I can try and impart a bit of knowledge on people, which I think I try and do daily, like whenever I have interactions. In terms of like one big lesson, it's hard to pick one out. I think we just touched on it. Probably if you're going through a shit time, fucking speak to someone about it. Because maybe, like I said, although all those experiences, I wouldn't change them, because I don't know if I'd be where I am today, which is in a very fortunate position, arguably with the best fitness brand in the country now in terms of what we do. I might not be here at this stage. So I wouldn't change those things, but there's certainly times where if there was someone who's a little bit more experienced or had, or like I say, more seniority to me in terms of what I was trying to achieve, having that conversation, or even just not isolating myself so much because I was so highly strung about this thing. But there are a lot of people out there that are going to be just like me, that are like so fixated on the singular one thing, that sometimes that's what's required to get to where you want to try and get to. And sometimes you've just got to swallow the frogs that come with it, because that's the only, like, it's the only way you can achieve being the best. And I think if you, when you're not overly talented, like I'm talented, but I'm not blessed with abundance of talent, you sometimes have to work double as hard. And that's something that I think my dad, going back to that story about like him instilling that as a person with like ethnicity in this country and whatever, what you're trying to achieve, you fucking got to work harder than people. And I wouldn't change that.
Amazing. That's a great place to